during the planning cycle for IE3.
Which was when?
That would have been sometime in '96.
So sometime in '96, according to your testimony, Microsoft made a projection of how much money it could expect to receive from browser advertising, from the search button and or the home page. Is that what you're saying?
Advertising in the very broad sense. The principle there'd be that revenue predated that. That was an insight we had quite a bit before that. But the first time we looked at, okay, what should we do with this traffic, would have been when we were thinking that IE3 would garner significant traffic.
When you say the first time we looked at what we would do about the traffic, I want to be sure, again, that the question and answer is meeting, because I know you use words very precisely. What my question is when did you first make a projection? When did Microsoft first make a projection of how much money Microsoft would receive from advertising revenue in connection with the browser?
Certainly asked and answered.
You may be right, but because he keeps changing the language he uses, and I know from prior answers that usually when he changes the words, he means something by it, I need to have it tied down.
Okay. And I think he does mean something by his use of words. I'm just saying that you asked the question and you got the answer.
What's the answer?
We looked at charging as part of the IE3 planning during 1996.
I'm not asking when you looked at charging. I'm asking when did Microsoft first make an estimate or projection of how much money it would receive?
Oh, when we looked at the issue of whether it was a better idea to charge or not as part of the IE3 planning.
And that would have been in 1996. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
You have to say yes or no for that.
Yes. You don't get mm-hmm.
She does, but it doesn't always come out exactly the way you'd think. And who made that estimate or projection?
Well, I know there was discussion with Pete Higgins and Peter Newport and myself about that, and each of us would have hazarded some view of the value there.
You were asked some questions earlier about a June 21, 1995 meeting with Netscape. And that's a meeting you did not attend, am I correct?
I've never met with Netscape.
And did you know that Microsoft people were meeting with Netscape before they actually met?
I don't recall knowing in advance.
You did know after the fact because you got the emails that we saw, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I recall getting those emails, at least the Thomas Reardon Silverberg one.
Now, Mr. Boyce, it's 6 o'clock now. It's been a pretty full day. If this is a relatively short line of questioning, why don't you finish it up? We'll go to about 6:15.
Okay.
Okay.
You are aware that it has been asserted that at that meeting there was an attempt to allocate markets between Netscape and Microsoft. Correct, sir?
My only knowledge of that is that there was an article in the Wall Street Journal very recently that said something along those lines. Otherwise, no.
Is it your testimony that the first time that you were aware that there was an assertion that there had been a market allocation meeting or an attempt to allocate markets at a meeting between representatives of Microsoft and Netscape was a recent Wall Street Journal article?
I'm not sure how to characterize it. The first I heard anything about that meeting and somebody trying to characterize it in some negative way, was an Andreessen quote that was in the Wall Street Journal very recently. And it surprised me.
Are you aware of any instances in which representatives of Microsoft have met with competitors in an attempt to allocate markets?
Objection.
I'm not aware of any such thing, and I know it's very much against the way we operate.
It would be against company policy to do that.
That's right.
Now, subsequent to being apprised that Mr. Andreessen, at least, was asserting that this had happened, did you make any effort to find out what had actually happened at that meeting?
Well, first of all, I don't want to be involved in characterizing what Mr. Andreessen said, because all I know is something about a quote about a dead horse head or something like that. That was what I recall from the Wall Street Journal article. I did, after the Wall Street Journal article, see some email that Andreessen had sent our people after the meeting saying it was a great meeting. And I did see the Reardon mail that I deleted, but somebody gave back to me, and some Reardon notes from the meeting. Now, I think we're talking about the same meeting. I think there may have been more than one, but in any case, I think we're talking about the same meeting.
I think the record may show that there was a meeting before the June 21 meeting.
That sounds right.
But the meeting that I was particularly asking about was the June 21 meeting, and I think that probably was what was in the Wall Street Journal, too.
No, you can't really say, because the Wall Street Journal talked about a May meeting,
Okay.
and May is not June.
You're right.
Not by a long shot.
May is not June. I agree with May is not June, and maybe there were two such meetings. I don't...
Well, I'm not aware of any meeting between us and Netscape in May, so that seems very strange, and that confused me about that Wall Street Journal article.
Let me ask you, did you, when you saw the Wall Street Journal article and talked about a May meeting in terms of allegedly market-dividing conduct, did you try to find out whether there had been a May meeting between representatives of Microsoft and representatives of Netscape?
Well, again, I wouldn't characterize the article in that way. When I read the article, what it said interested me enough and concerned me enough. I did seek to find out if there was a May meeting, but I don't think the article is what you're said what you're suggesting. I mean, we should get a copy of the article. I don't remember it that way.
Okay.
I remember Andreessen talking about how he'd been in fear that Don Corleone had come to see him, and once I realized that there was no meeting in May, and it wasn't, that he after the meeting said he enjoyed the meeting and that it was, just a group of our guys down there trying to talk about if there was any areas of cooperation. The whole thing seemed very strange to me.
Did you talk to people to find out whether there was a May meeting?
Yes,
Who'd you talk to?
I consulted with my lawyers.
Other than consulting with your lawyers, did you try to find out whether there was a May meeting?
Well, my lawyers then talked to all the people that might have met with Netscape, and I made sure they did that pretty broadly.
And you were informed that there was no May meeting? Is that your testimony?
That's the understanding I was given, yes. And then I was given some of the other information that I've already mentioned.
But all that information came from your lawyers, not from non-lawyer employees of Microsoft. Is that what you're saying?
It came to me through my lawyers.
Did you ever have a conversation with anyone in the last 12 months, other than your lawyers, concerning whether there were meetings in May or June of 1995 with Netscape, and if so, what happened at those meetings?
Well, there might have been a point after I got all the data from the lawyers where I said to some of the PR people what an outrageous slander that article had been and how unfair I felt it was, and so I may have mentioned that to them.
Did you have any conversations in the last 12 months with any person who was dealing with Netscape in 1995 about whether there were May or June meetings, and if so, what happened at those meetings?
Now, I relied on the lawyers to go in and meet with those people and gather the facts and educate me about, was there a May meeting and what was the agenda, or what was Andreessen's state of mind after the meeting, what did the notes look like. But that's all very recent. That is after the journal article.
Now, have you ever read the complaint in this case?
No.
Have you ever received a summary of the complaint in this case?
I wouldn't say I've received a summary, no. I've talked to my lawyers about the case, but not really the complaint.
Do you know whether in the complaint there is an assertion? I'm not talking about the Wall Street Journal article. I'm talking about the complaint that was filed last May. Do you know whether in that complaint there are allegations concerning a 1995 meeting between Netscape and Microsoft representatives relating to alleged market division discussions?
I haven't read the complaint, so I don't know for sure, but I think somebody said that is in there.
Did you find that out before or after the Wall Street Journal article?
The first time I knew about these allegations was the Wall Street Journal article. So
That is, that article preceded any knowledge that you had or didn't have related to the complaint.
that's right.
Okay. That completes that line of questioning.
Okay. Pick up tomorrow at 8:30?
That'd be good.
Okay.
Yeah, the 4 o'clock deadline tomorrow is fortunately not a movable deadline.
This is the end of the deposition. The time is 6:12. This is the end of tape 4 of the videotape deposition of Bill Gates, to be continued tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m., which is August 28th.